Hi, this is Smitley from thirstgym.com, and today we're going to show you how to sumo deadlift. Personally, when I competed at 130 pounds, my best sumo deadlifting competition was 510. I actually made the switch to sumo after a couple years in my career from not only having some low back issues, but I was really just struggling setup-wise, and I felt like I was struggling to make progress. So I went to an Elite FTS seminar, eventually joined Elite FTS, and they basically taught me how to sumo, and it came down to they thought sumo would be where I would have the most success. I stuck with the sumo throughout the rest of my career, and that is where I definitely had my best pulls. So when it comes to sumo or conventional, I think I can help you because I've done both at a high level, but I honestly prefer sumo. I will tell you that from a sports performance perspective, we teach most of our athletes how to sumo versus conventional. I think that since most sports are played out in a wider position, and we're talking about changing direction and building hip strength, I think being in a wider position makes more sense. I also think kids are less likely to use their low back. If they don't have the proper glutes, hamstring, and hip strength and good positioning, they can't get the weight off the floor to even get hurt in the first place. I think that generally you're seeing people get hurt when they can use their low back with the conventional to get the weight off the floor. But that's for talk for another day. In terms of technique, this is hopefully going to be your end-all be-all to helping you learn how to sumo deadlift like a champ. So let's start with what the sumo is and isn't. So the sumo is a wider stance deadlift, ideally where the feet are outside of our hips and the hands are coming in. Ed Cohn had this very novel new sumo where it was a little bit here, it was kind of like a hybrid. Again, that works. It works for Ed. Ed's the best of all time. He's the GOAT for a reason, but that's still technically a sumo deadlift to me. But I do think you either need to kind of pick conventional or sumo, unless if you're Ed. But when it comes to the sumo, we want to make sure our toes are slightly turned out sideways. We don't want to be hugging the bar to where we're actually on it. Okay, we want to be able to give us a little bit of space, and I know from just all my years of sumo deadlifting where that is with my shoe. So my suggestion is, if you find a position that's working well for you and it feels comfortable, pay attention in your training shoes where that's at with your shoe, so you can set up the same time, and then use the power rings to get an idea of where your width is. So I mean, most people line their shins up with whatever it is that they use, the power rings or whatever. I personally use the eyelets of my shoes, and I know that I'm usually just slightly in the power rings in terms of my competitive stance. So once we're here, then what I like to do is make sure that we're in a good upright position and that the athlete understands how to break the hips and the knees at the same time. Because what we want to basically try to do is continue to drive our knees out while our chest stays tall. And I learned that at a Elite FTS seminar a long time ago. I'm sure somebody else has popularized it, but basically learning to put your balls or your nut sack on the bar. And if you're a girl, then basically learn how to put your own junk on the bar if you had to. So again, I've got strings from my shorts too as well, and ideally that's a good way to learn if you're keeping your hips over the barbell. What we don't want is we don't want to have our hips go back this way like an RDL. I think it's a good way to learn positioning, but when it comes to actually deadlifting the weight, we don't want to do that. So when we're here, again, feel the size of our shoes. We want to break at our knees, make sure our hips are broke. Our hands are just going to come straight down. I don't think you want to try to bring them in. You don't want to try to widen them. Just let them go straight down from wherever they would be. If you're a flip grip, you can obviously do that too. But as we go down, I think it's ideal that you take your breath at the top, conventional or sumo. You're going to breathe in, brace from that position, come down. That's going to help you create pressure, okay? So you can get some umph more off the floor, especially sumo. A lot of people have issues with that. And then you're going to pull yourself into position. So we're going to learn to pull the slack out, so that little bit here, we want to pull that out. That way we're in a good position and we can kind of wedge ourselves down. That's going to help obviously pull a little bit of weight off of the bar, so to speak, but we're going to wedge into position better, so then we actually go to push into the floor, the weight's going to come up much easier than trying to yank. So you see those people that are here and they yank like that and then they round. It's no good. Pull that slack out here, and I do one arm and the other. Some people do both, personal preference, but I always reach along with my right here, and then I would reset and get some pop and pull, or you can hold that position. That's up to you. I can already feel my glutes and hamstrings. Whew, boy, they're working. Okay, here, keep my chest tall, push through my heels, feel the sides of my shoes. As I pull, okay, my knees are gonna continue to lock out, but I'm gonna almost pull up and back a little bit more so than up. That way that as I'm coming here, I can drive my butt and hips towards the barbell, okay? So here, breath, pull slack, hips forward, okay? Pull slack out, drive, it's forward. One more time. Here, hips forward, boom. Okay? So notice that as I'm coming to lock out, I'm bringing my butt forward. I'm trying to keep that barbell into my hips as close as I can. As soon as that barbell gets away from me, I'm screwed. Okay? With maximum weights, there's no way you're going to be able to retighten and pull that bar back into you. You've got to continue to keep it in as close as you possibly can, and then bring your butt forward. As you bring your butt forward, you're going to keep your chest tall, let all that lock out, and you're in a good position right here. So that's pretty much a sumo deadlift. I personally think it's easier. I know there's some technical things that are different, but as long as you wedge in, get that good wide base, you're probably good. I will say the one thing I didn't cover was like your hip position. So when you come down to grab the bar, you want to make sure your hips are higher than your knees. Okay, this isn't a squat. Okay, we're not going to squat it up. We just want to make sure our hips stay good and high, our knees are out, and then we're going to push to the sides of our shoes and pull as we push, and then bring those hips all the way through to meet the bar here in a good strong position. That's going to let us get our hips, our adductors, all that kind of jazz in to help us get the weight moving and finish the exercise with the lower body. And basically arms are just hooks, okay? So programming on the sumo deadlift, honestly, exact same thing as the conventional. I'm a firm believer that less is more when it comes to the deadlift. Singles, double, triples I think are where it's at. Maybe some fives. I think 8s and 10s on deadlifts are just too much. I don't think the body can recover from the volume and the CNS stress from it. Personally, I do know that I also feel that for me personally, the deadlift was the indicator of my nervous system response and how I was recovering. My deadlift felt like trash. I probably need more recovery, more food, more fluid, more rest. I need to back off a little. If my deadlift was feeling good and primed, that probably was a good sweet spot in terms of my training, just because there's no heavy eccentric phase. So we've got to be able to have a good nervous system response. Boom, let it fire to help get that weight coming off the ground, which is why the nervous system is incredibly important for the deadlift. You can obviously do speed work as well with conjugate stuff, so 50, 60, 70% pulling for singles, doubles. I also think that you can do partials and things like that off the blocks. But for the most part, I mean, that is the sumo deadlift. Again, your feet width and everything is all personal preference of how wide or narrow you are. I think you'll find a sweet spot, and when you find it again, like I said, line it up with your shoes and be consistent with that. As your leverages change, if you happen to grow, gain weight, lose weight, understand that if you pull sumo, a lot of times your leverages will feel a little funky or a little off. You may have to play with your foot position and your torso position a little bit to make it feel more fluid. Again, that's something I always found whenever I was cutting weight when I competed. But I think that's the sumo deadlift, at least as much as I can give you right now off the top of my head. If you've got any questions about the sumo deadlift, helps with your setup, questions, technique, want me to look at something, just comment in the comment section and let me know, and I'd be happy to help you. Thanks. Have a great day.